Hello, my loves. I am so happy that you are here. Very special episode today. We are recording all of the lessons that I have learned in what I love to call the defining decade, our 20s. I cannot believe that I am 30 years old. I feel so ready to be 30, and I am so grateful and so excited to sit down with you today and go through all of the lessons that I learned in my 20s. Turning 30 feels like a deep exhale. I feel like I am finally coming home to myself. This episode is for anyone deep in the chaos, the beauty, the messiness of your 20s, because I was too. I've moved cities a few times, started a few companies, launched my career, bought a home. I've lost people I never thought I'd have to live without. And I learned how to love deeper, myself included. There were breakdowns, breakups, friendship breakups, bad dates, magical ones, mistakes I am so grateful for now, and lessons I will never forget. Your 20s aren't about getting it right. They're about getting to know yourself. So this episode, this is my heart. This is every mistake, every milestone, every reflection, truly the truth behind my highlight reel. I've really loved taking this time to reflect and think back on what I love to call the most defining decade. And I kind of feel like this could be the start of a future novel that I'd love to write. But these are the lessons that I'm carrying with me into this next chapter of life. I broke this down into 7 different chapters, and my hope is that you can find a little bit of your own story through my stories and all of the lessons I've learned. Okay, let's get into it. Chapter 1, my post-grad panic and my move to LA. The lesson, take risks while you can. Okay, let's go back to the beginning of my 20s. I had just graduated college in this tiny town in South Carolina. I was living in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and I remember feeling this insane pressure, like I had to figure out my entire life at 20 years old. Everyone kept asking me, what job do you want? Where are you going to live? What's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? I didn't even know what I was passionate about yet. And there was so much comparison, so much noise, zero peace. Also, everyone else kind of seemed like they had this clean little life plan. They were either going to move to Charlotte or DC or New York. They knew where they were going. They wanted to either do med school or law school or become an accountant. They knew what they wanted and they knew what was next. And I just didn't. And nothing sounded like something I wanted to say yes to. I remember feeling like I needed to fit in, like I needed to follow this common path. But here's the thing. Your 20s are actually the time to take the risk and do the different thing. You don't have a mortgage yet. You don't have a family to feed yet. So as I love to say, risk it for the biscuit. I packed up all my shit and I moved to Los Angeles. I put all of my tiny little apartment into my car, left that tiny South Carolina town behind, and I drove across the country to Los Angeles. So I move in a few blocks down from my brother Frankie in Venice Beach. So he had a year post-grad before me, and he worked super hard and had this huge idea to start a company. I was clueless about what I wanted to do next, and he actually brought me in and trusted me to help scale a company together. We were 2 siblings in our early 20s. We had zero experience, just really big dreams, but literally no clue what we were doing. We ended up running a marketing agency based on how our generation heard about brands, and that was through people. We got really lucky because this was at the rise of influencer marketing before the word influencer even existed. So the lesson here is I said yes, and that decision changed the trajectory of my entire life. Don't wait until you feel ready. Don't do what everyone else is doing. Don't wait until your path is clear. Just go. Say yes while your stakes are low, because that one risk can be the beginning of everything. Okay, chapter 2, self-trust. My lesson was that being young was actually my superpower. Looking back, what I was really building in those early years in Los Angeles wasn't just a business. I was building self-trust. It was learning how to bet on myself before the world told me that I was qualified. What I learned is that when you say yes to yourself and really believe in yourself, it goes a really, really, really far way. And you basically crush the conventions around you and this idea of climbing a corporate ladder. You can then build this innate confidence from within that speaks volumes about you before you even open your mouth. If you don't believe in yourself, who else will? One of the greatest gifts of my 20s was learning to trust myself, believe in myself, as well as trust others and believe in others as well. I really love this quote: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. My brother and I supported each other. We trusted each other. We said yes to the hard things together, these scary things, these unknowns. We did it all together. And that kind of belief in one another is what accelerated our growth like nothing else. We were two kids with no roadmap and just this shared mission. And we were scrappy as hell. And yes, somehow we both ended up being named Forbes 30 Under 30. I'll never forget it. Back-to-back years. That morning that I woke up and I saw my name on the Forbes list, that was the first real affirmation I ever received for doing the different, scary, but so rewarding thing. I was in my early 20s pitching multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns to heads of companies that were literally more than 3 times my age. But you know what? I realized they needed me. They needed my input. They needed my perspective. I used to think that I had to prove that I belonged in the room, that I should lie about how young I was, that I didn't really deserve a seat at the table. And then I realized that my power was actually in the fact that I was young. I was this young woman that saw things that they different. I was this young woman that saw things that they didn't. Please listen to me when I tell you your voice matters not in spite of who you are, but because of who you are. And in your 20s, especially as a woman, especially when you're just starting out, that is your secret weapon. So don't dilute it. Don't dim it. Don't wait until you feel experienced enough to speak up, because the room you are in right now needs you, right here, right now. Not that version of you that's 10 years away, but the one who's figuring it out right here in real time. Chapter 3, my yes phase. It was friend groups, online dates, and figuring out who the hell I was. My lesson here: you won't know until you try. Okay, let's talk early 20s. The part where you leave college and suddenly you're in a random town making new friends in a new city. You're going on first dates with random people you met online, and you're just doing your freaking best to not get catfished out there or end up in the wrong Uber like I did many times. It's chaotic, it's hilarious, but it's also lonely, and you learn so much about yourself so quickly. I actually found myself in circles where people loved to party, like really party. I wanted to fit in so bad, so I became this fun party girl in rooms that weren't really meant for me. And I said yes to that identity until I realized that it really was this big no. My habits weren't aligned. The people just didn't feel like my people. And that was a version of me that wasn't really rooted in my truth. It was just rooted in wanting to belong. But that was my lesson. You have to say yes to things that you don't love to figure out what you do love. You have to try on that version of you that doesn't fit in order to come home to the one that fits so beautifully. I needed to be in that environment to learn that it wasn't for me. And when you get to know yourself, you get to make really powerful decisions based on knowing who you are. So on that note, let's chat dating in your 20s. Oh my God, y'all. I dated the surfer, the DJ, the banker, the entrepreneur, the professional skateboarder. Oh my God. But we can't forget about the narcissist, the avoidant, the actor that was probably acting our entire situationship. Honestly, I just didn't know my type yet. I didn't know my non-negotiables. I didn't know what it felt like to feel safe or loved or seen. And now that I'm sitting here married, I'm so grateful to have had all those experiences. And honestly, so is Andrew. We both had so many messy chapters. And because of that, we were both able to give each other such a full yes of knowing that we were different. Like him and I, when we got together, it was different than what we had experienced, and we were exactly what the other person was looking for. This also goes for friendships too. You'll have soul ties that fade, situationships that linger, and these friendships that sometimes end in a whisper and sometimes end in a big bang. But sitting here now, hindsight 2020, you really need those. You need those experiences because if you don't know what doesn't feel good, you'll never be able to recognize what feels like home. So in this part of your 20s, try it all. Say yes, even if he's a professional skateboarder. You're not trying to figure out your final destination. You're simply just figuring out your direction. And that is the whole point. Chapter 4, saying yes to the inner work. The lesson here is that feeling good feels really good. There's a point in your 20s where you start looking in, and for me, that started in front of a mirror. It started when I went to the doctor. They had me step on the scale, and I weighed 200 pounds at a small height of 5'3". I remember looking at myself in the mirror and thinking, if I don't change, nothing is going to change here. I had been overweight my entire life. It was who I was, or basically who I told myself I was. But I now know that that identity I was telling myself, that story I was telling myself, that was also my biggest excuse to stay overweight. And as long as I believed that it was just who I was, I didn't have to change it. And you know what? I leaned into it. I really leaned into that identity because I was scared of what it would look like to actually change it. But that morning at the doctor's office, when I found out how much I weighed, I got really real with myself. There were no more excuses, no more avoiding my potential, no more living in this body that I wasn't proud of and that I was honestly treating like shit. I started making really good choices based on who I wanted to be versus who I kept telling myself that I was. That first choice for me was hiring a nutritionist. I didn't need another diet. I had tried basically everything out there. I needed to finally understand my relationship with food. And what I didn't know in my early 20s, but I see so clearly now, is that food had always been very emotional for me. So when I think back to my childhood and my teenage years, all of my worst memories growing up happened around the dinner table. It was all over meals. It was chaotic. So every time I sat down to eat, I was basically calling in that same energy. So no wonder I was completely disconnected from my body. I was living in this dissociated body. I was not thriving. I was binge eating for most of my life. So I learned how to eat for my body, not anyone else's, but for mine. I learned how to treat my body with the love and the respect that it had been begging for so long. And then I also started to move, and I wasn't working out because I hated my body, but because I was finally ready to take really good care of it. And I learned that that movement, it wasn't this punishment that I had to show up to. It was actually such a privilege. Oh my gosh, I tried it all. I did CrossFit. I started walking. I did the random yoga, the hot yoga, all these different types of yoga. I started Pilates. I would do mat Pilates, hot Pilates, reformer Pilates, mega former Pilates, so many Pilates. And then I found Sami Clark on YouTube. And spoiler alert, that random girl on the internet became my best friend, my now co-founder, my literal soul sister. She changed my life by introducing me to movement that I actually loved doing. And little did I know at the time that years later, we would build Form together and give women all the tools that they need to change their lives in the way that I did. But with movement, when I got consistent with that movement that I did love, the weight just started to melt off and something else started to shed too. I was shedding all of these old identities. I was shedding these old social circles, these old stories that I would tell myself. I started spending time with what I now love to call my vision holders, these people who were already embodying where I was going and where I wanted to go, not where I had already been. And here's my truth in that. You can't transform your life until you are ready to say yes to doing the inner work. When you can really meet yourself, understand who you are, not what the world is just projecting onto you. Chapter 5, Falling in Love with Andrew. My lesson here is that timing matters, and when you know, you know. Okay, so now let's talk about the biggest shift of all, my reward, the one that walked in at a mutual friend's birthday party after years of me saying yes to doing the inner work. Andrew Spalter, that really cute Jewish boy I had heard about for so many years, but finally met at the most perfect time. When I met Andrew, it felt like I was looking into a mirror. It felt like everything that I had been working on in myself, he had already done in himself. And let me just tell you, if you are in the thick of dating, that was everything. The fact that we had both already spent so much time on ourselves to know what we liked, to know what we wanted, and time to make mistakes, and to also be able to recognize when something is very aligned, that mattered. I know if I met Andrew a year earlier, it would have been a completely different situation, and I would have been a completely different person, also looking for something very different. So that's a huge lesson from my 20s. Timing in your 20s really matters. People can come into your life at the wrong time. And when they do, no matter how hard you try to force it, it won't work. You cannot manifest through misalignment. You can't wrestle your way into the right thing at the wrong time. When Andrew and I met, it just clicked. We had both started and scaled our own companies. We had both dated people who had taught us exactly what we did not want and exactly what we were looking for. I didn't have to really wonder if he was ready. He never had to wonder if I was serious. We just spoke about it and we knew because we both knew ourselves. There weren't any of those games that I was so used to. It was just this like real amazing love. That was such a huge gift of my 20s. After all of those weird first dates, the awkward, what are we situationships, all the inner work I did, the therapy, the journal entries. Oh my goodness. The nights I spent crying, wondering who the heck I will ever find to love. They led me to finding the most perfect person I was always so deserving of. But that timing needed to be aligned. Here's what I'll say to anyone listening that is still in the messy middle. I was there and I feel you, girl. When you do the work, when you build that self-trust, when you say yes to what teaches you and no to what drains you, you will recognize greatness when it walks into the room. You will recognize when you meet your Andrew Spalter. When you know, you know. And I also like to say, when you don't know, you also know. Chapter 6, my hardest goodbye. Suddenly losing my mom, with the lesson here being learning how to be human. So this next part of my story, you might have heard me speak about it before, but it's definitely the hardest for me to talk about. And it's the moment that my mom died. There was no warning, no moment to say goodbye, no final hug, no last words like I always saw in the movies. I just got a phone call and my entire world stopped. It completely shattered me. It was every fear I'd ever carried suddenly my reality in this permanent nightmare. My mom had struggled with alcoholism my entire life, and it's actually something that I had kept hidden for a really long time. I've only recently started to talk about it, and what I've realized is that when you name your truth, you are healing it. What I will never forget is not just the loss of my mom, but learning how to live again. And that's what I want to talk about today. When my world completely shattered, I had to look to my people. I learned to ask for help as someone who never liked to ask for help. I learned to slow down. I learned to let myself grieve. I didn't run from the pain, because here is the thing that no one tells you: your grief, it will find you. My grief always found me, no matter how hard I tried to distract myself with work. I always say that grief is not a linear path. It's something that you will always carry with you. It finds you in these silent moments. It finds you in the middle of your biggest joys. You really just can't outrun it. You can only learn to let it move through you. And when it did, the pain and the sadness, they can really take over your whole life. So you need to lean on your people. Think of my brother, my dad, my husband, my aunt, Andrew's entire family, all of my chosen family and my friendships. They all really showed up again and again and again. So many tears, so many moments, and I let them. And that was my lesson. My superpower wasn't being superhuman. It was allowing myself to finally just be human, this messy, very emotional, very needy human that was not perfect. My grief changed a lot about me. It made me so much softer, more awake, more present. I think once you lose someone, everything is different. You taste food differently. You see color differently. You hug so much bigger and harder. You love bigger. You don't sweat these little things anymore because they just don't matter. And I've actually had this thought recently that I know my mom waited to leave until she knew I was so held and so supported and so loved. And I know that she knew I was capable of living without her physically here, even though I'm able to feel her through everything. I watched my mom be human her entire life. It was messy, but it was also watching her biggest light. And that gave me the courage to show up and be human too. My mom wasn't perfect. She was just honestly trying her best. And in every lifetime, I would choose her to be my mom time and time again. Losing her was by far the hardest thing I've ever lived through, but that cracked me open. It created so much space for me to finally live fully, to love deeply, to learn to trust, to learn to ask for help, and allow myself to not have to be perfect anymore. I just needed to simply be human. Okay, our last chapter, chapter 7, stepping into my own power. The lesson here is that you deserve your own love too. This last lesson of my 20s was all about stepping out of the shadows that I had built around myself for so long. I had spent so many years nurturing everyone else around me, cheering for them, helping them shine, and I loved it. It's my comfort zone. But I honestly started to believe that that was all I was really meant to do. I was supposed to be this nurturing supporter on the sidelines. But here's the truth that I finally learned. You do not have to dim your own light to allow someone else's to shine. There is room for all of us. Being the constant supporter was actually crushing the spirit inside of me, and I was finally so ready to be seen. This hit me head on 3 months before my wedding when my mom passed away. No one can prepare you for that. Planning one of the happiest days of your life while literally living through your worst nightmare. There's definitely no blueprint for that. We had over 250 friends and family meeting us in Dallas to celebrate. And honestly, for weeks, all I could think about was, how am I supposed to pretend that everything's okay? And I would talk to Andrew about it. It was just consuming me all the time. And then something shifted. Our wedding day wasn't about my grief, and I didn't want it to be. I wanted it to be about our love. I wanted it to be about Andrew and I wanted it to be about the love that I deserved. And that wedding day actually became the first moment that I allowed myself to really take up space, like real tangible space in the room, and to allow myself to shine as bright as possible, to allow myself to be celebrated, to stand in the light without guilt. And oh my God, I could feel it all weekend long. At this point, we were also 2 years into form, and our business was growing really quickly, and so was I. And honestly, saying yes to stepping into my own power allowed me to stop hiding how hard I was working. I stopped pretending that I wasn't this business force. I stopped shying away from knowing a ton and doing really, really, really great, important work. I started owning it, and not in this weird ego way, but in the way that I deserved. This was the moment I began to really share my full story with you as well, the really messy, vulnerable stuff, all of my healing, all of the growth, this real journey of it all. And not because I had it all figured out, but because I knew and I know now that someone out there needed to feel a little less alone, and I could do that by sharing my story. And what I've realized is the more that I share with you, the more I get to connect with you. And my weight loss story has now become this story that's way more than just a personal transformation. It's become such a bridge to so much connection with so many of you. I feel like people really started to see me as soon as I started to share who I really was, and they related. And I always say there's so much abundance in this world, so you do not have to dim your light to make someone else feel comfortable. You can love people so deeply and still choose yourself so boldly. So please learn from me and don't wait for the perfect version of you to step into the light. You, right now, as imperfect as you might feel you are so worthy of shining your light. Another quote that I love that I say all the time is that no one is you, and that is your power. And you really, really, really deserve all the light. Okay, let's tie a bow on this. So here I am, officially 30 years old, standing on, honestly, the most solid foundation I've ever known because I built it myself, brick by brick by brick. And if you're listening to this and you're still in the middle of the mess that is your 20s, this is your permission to just say yes to it all. Say yes to what's right. Say yes to what ends up teaching you that it is wrong. Whatever you want for your life is so yours to have. So just keep saying yes. Keep trusting yourself. Keep doing that inner work. Keep stepping into the light that you deserve. Oh my goodness, you are not here to shrink. I'm going to repeat that. You are not here to shrink. You are here to shine. You are here to transform. So go be that light. I'm so grateful to go through all these lessons from my 20s with you guys. I'm sending so much love. I cannot believe I'm 30. I feel like I'm still such a kid, but reflecting on so many of these lessons that I've learned over the last decade just made me feel so human in the best way. I can't wait to hear how you related to today's episode. I love you guys so much. Thank you for all the birthday love, and I can't wait to keep growing alongside you in this new decade. Love you. I'll see you in the next episode.